Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review for the month of February. And I will be covering right now in this video a Robin Williams film, License to Wed. Haven't seen this in so many years, and uh, uh, it just came to mind at least a month or so before February, and it's like, I gotta put it on the list because, like, I don't know how it came up on my feed, but it's like, okay, I haven't seen this in years, and I love Robin Williams, fellow Chicago great. Uh, I remember liking this film decently. It came on cable. I didn't go to the theater to see it, but it's directed by Ken Kwapis, who did a lot of directing for many episodes of The Office, a show I personally never watched, but I've seen clips. So a lot of these people on this list of cast, you would recall from The Office. So we got Robin Williams as Reverend Frank Littleton, Mandy Moore as Sadie Jones Murphy, John Krasinski as Ben Murphy. And I honestly, watching this guy's performance and like how tall and lanky he is, it's like, yeah, that's freaking that's Reed Richards. And like, I still don't get. I love Pedro Pascal, but honestly, this is not something. Playing Reed Richards is not something like. That's not him. He's not Reed Richards. They could have gone with either John Krasinski or just a relative no name, a young no name, to fill in that role rather than like just let's get an A-list actor so that we can guarantee butts and seats. And it's like, oh my god, it's like, I know he probably will be a guaranteed hit. He's done stellar work, but sometimes you gotta ease up on just pulling from the old well of A-list actors. You think like this guy is cheap now? It's not like he was when he was in Game of Thrones. He costs money now. And it's like you're already wasting budgets, crazy amount of budget on random stuff that probably gonna be half-assed, like, Ant-Man 3 level of half-assed of quality. And it's like, and most of it is gonna be going to freaking actors, A-list actors that aren't cheap. Eric Christian Olsen is Charlize Myers. Christian Taylor as Lindsay Jones, sister to Katie. Josh Flitter, Cameron the choir boy. D. Ray Davis as Joel Howard. Peter Strauss as Mr. Jones, Grace Zabriskie as Grandma Jones, Roxanne Hart as Mrs. Jones. The family, a lot of these are this family of the bride. Mindy Kaling as Cheryl Rywat. Is supposed to be like the wife of D. Ray Davis's character, but they don't share a freaking last name. And we've got Wanda Sykes as Nurse Borman, Brian Baumgartner as Jim Boyce, and we got the actual parents of John Krasinski playing his parents in the film, which is, I think, is pretty cool. It's like just short little bits. They didn't really get any speaking roles. So I thought that was pretty cool. So basically, there's a two-pronged thing. I want to go about like the kind of realism of the relationship parts or the wedding parts, and then like the whole movie aspect of it. But I'm going to do the movie aspect of it first. So sorry. Ben and I'm pretty sure it's Joyce. Oh, Sadie. Uh, Ben and Sadie meet each other. It's like a meet cute thing at a coffee shop. And this movie is, narrated by Reverend Frank, which also is like the biggest problem. I mean, not the biggest problem, but it was a problem in the film that you probably won't be catch by surprise until the end of the film, where he starts off narrating about relationships and what goes in when it comes to wedding and actual marriage, because there's two different things. Weddings are one thing, marriage is a whole nother ball of wax. But at no point at any other part of the film that we circle back to the narration, which is very lazy. It's one of the laziest things you can do in a film if you're going to introduce narration. I'm not sure what happened behind the scenes to just toss that out, but if you set up something like a narration, you don't just like give up on that. Like, people are going to forget, because like, I don't know, you would think like, okay, at the very least you don't have to keep coming in throughout the film, but it'd be cool to let us know you're still there and telling us this story. But at the very least, you should come back at the tail end to wrap up the film on like a very happy note about marriage and everything like that. You don't do that. That's kind of weird. These two, you see like a montage of them, going through courting stages, the awkward phase of like, saying like, I love you for the first time, and then getting the first kiss, and then eventually moving in together. And this gets up into like 6 months in, it said, but I don't know, because it says like a title of 6 months later after the whole moving in part, and that's when he's like got an engagement ring and ready to propose. And I'm thinking like, that is super fast. There's a lot of things that's happening super fast that wouldn't really be realistic even for back then, 2007. But generally like the rule of thumb would be a year of because at least the 3-date stage is like probably at least a month or two, just to like get to know you kind of moment. Then by like the 3rd, 4th day, if things press on, people could like decide as a unit where you want to like at least more specifically the guy knows full well like, okay, I want the be serious with this girl. So then it'll be probably maybe a whole nother year before you would consider moving in together, because that'll be during that course of time. This is me like my adult mind, in like the general rule of thumb you would assume, because it's case by case basis, but this is just like, on average, but like a few months during the first 3 dating stages, a couple of months with the first 3 dating stages, the first 3 dates. Then after like you solidified if you want this girl to be like your girlfriend and establishing a relationship with this one woman, then it'll probably be a whole nother year, so that way you both of you can meet each other's friends and family during that course. Spend all the holidays and birthdays together, and during that course you would have at least gotten out of that little puppy love stage. Well, not necessarily within that time frame, but you'll probably had enough time to like disagree on stuff, know what each other like, dislike. I mean, they touch on it here, but as I bring it up here, it's like because it seems kind of fast. Because if I give it like a generous time frame, maybe it's been, I mean, a year and 6 months, maybe, because by when approaching a 2-year mark, that's when you probably would consider like moving in together. And then within maybe bare minimum 3-4 months after that, you would probably start considering at least up until a year extra. If a guy decides like, okay, I need to like put a down payment on a ring for to engage, because like I want to take it to the next level, because I'm having a great time with this woman, and I'm digging her a lot. We like know each other in and out. It reached to that stage, and through the whole course from point A to point B, that is like 3 years max before you'd even consider like popping the question, at least for a guy. Like I said, every guy is different, but that's just on average. It'd be kind of weird if I knew this girl who been with this guy 5 years and still haven't popped a question. They literally move in together, and it's like, okay, the guy really pushing the marker, because at any point a guy could easily, any person will be easily saying like, okay, well, what's taking so long if y'all literally live together and you've been together for 5 years? And it's kind of odd at a certain point. But then on the other side of things, if you're like barely 6 months in and you're getting ready to, or at least up until like a year knowing each other, and then you start wanting to like pop the question, that is way too fast. That is, like I said, this had to be a year and 6 months, but it just says 6 months, like, I don't know, 6 months. Maybe it is trying to say 6 months after the move-in period that they did. Anyway, they went to Sadie's parents' 30-year engagement party, and that's where I keep wanting to call him Jim from The Office, because he's got the Jim face. Ben. So it's one of those kind of awkward romantic comedy kind of things where he, is fumbling with his words. He doesn't know the right thing to say, so he just kind of like blurted out like, I just want to ask you to marry me. God, he's not saying it in frustration to her. He's saying it in frustration out of himself, because he's trying to like, why can't I just say the words kind of thing. So he just kind of just blase said it, and she says yes. So everybody's thrilled, but Sadie wants her childhood minister to marry them in their church. So they go to meet Reverend Frank, who seems like one of those like cool ministers, eccentric ministers, where it's, I've been to my fair share of churches when I was like a little kid, even though like I'm not like super religious. I do believe in God, but like I'm not super religious. I don't really go to church like that. But you see him like, which is like a kudos to the writings, because we already know what this character is like immediately, just before he does any interacting with our main characters. He's doing this Family Feud type of thing with the children to get them to learn about the 10 Commandments, which is like a pretty dope thing, because learning should be fun kind of thing, and it's one of the best tools to get young kids to learn about certain subjects. So then we meet Frank's little assistant, which adds to another kind of cringy thing, given the fact that, you know, it wasn't too long ago, or at least for a good long spell, there's constant jokes about, like, you know, priests and reverends with, you know, little altar boys and stuff like that. It's kind of like, you know, thing. And maybe, you know, this was kind of like a jab at that situation, where you got Cameron, the choir boy, who's like, he's kind of like his, Reverend Frank's little minion, whereas he's very, like, you know, very, no pun intended, frank with people, no craps given. So they look through their book to see any availability to wed these two, and it's kind of weird. You think they'll be I think they kind of flipped this. It's kind of weird. Personally, I would have gone the other way. It's not a big deal, but personally, I would have gone the other way with it. But first they said, like, oh, our next availability, because they flipped through all these pages, and the next availability until 2 years from now, which obviously is not going to work for them. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, wasn't that a cancellation? They go flipping back to previous pages and find one that's 3 weeks from now. So they take that. But it's like, okay, you flipping through all that, you wouldn't have saw that first? Because it's like, you know, we can do 3 weeks from now. It's like, that's kind of soon. Oh, like, well, our next availability won't be 2 weeks from now. I guess it's maybe for the joke of it, that's why they did the other way, but I don't know. So they go with the 3 weeks, but they have to go through Reverend Frank's marriage course just to properly prepare nuptials to the to the marriage part of things, because pretty much like getting them out of that puppy dog phase of, you know, getting hitched and everything like that. He wants to, you know, make sure they have like a solid foundation before they enter this very serious commitment, because marriage is a vow, is a contract, which nowadays some people treat it like, you know, like, because no other person, there's no other contract in the world where you just up and break just because, you know, like, oh, I'm not happy anymore with, you know, the commitment I have given the contract. That just won't fly. And marriage is a contract of sorts, not just by God, but to the people of your family and friends, that, you know, in front of everybody, or even by further extension, the eyes of the law, because you get like a marriage certificate. So it's like, you're, you know, you reach to the point where you know that you want to be with this person, and like, you know, you look it up, 80% of the divorces in, you know, this day and age is done so by women. I'm sorry to say, the facts are the facts, and it's like mostly because either finance or they just like not feeling it no more, which is like, you know, nobody want to stick it out no more. I'm not saying like, you know, because I think like divorce should be like, in my personal opinion, I think a lot of people would agree, divorce should be on the mandate, the fact that there's legit physical abuse or some kind of substance abuse one of the parties are going through, that, you know, despite the other person trying as they might to get them off that situation, it's just not working. If you know, those two are like legitimate reasons to file for divorce, in my opinion. They're just like, yeah, you gotta get that, you know, out of that. But other than that, other than those two, you figure out a way to make that work. that's what marriage counselors are for, to get through those kind of rough patches. But I'm just saying, it's like, I'm not saying like most people won't try that, but it's just people jump to the divorce too quickly without mostly not trying everything else. But anyway, Reverend Frank's mindset is like, okay, go through this course, establish a foundation. At that point, once you pass, I deemed you ready to be wed. Fair enough. Usually this course is like a 3-month period, but given the fact that we got a shorter time period, it's going to be a 3-week period, and it's kind of like crunch time, or at least crunch time. So one of the things that Reverend Frank, or at least, he established right off the bat, like, no premarital sex, because as he put it, a lot of couples who have like, static between each other, they try to use sex as like a band-aid essentially, but it doesn't fix the problem, which is a fair assessment. Most people like to, if for example, if a girl messed up, her go-to move to apologize is just give up, give the guy sex without the verbal apology. And it's just like, or if they get into a heated argument, they just have like angry sex, and just to get that, that frustration out, which is probably in most cases that's not healthy. Well, to a certain point of view, that's unhealthy across the board. So no premarital sex. Also, Reverend Frank has the choir boy plant a bug in Ben and Sadie's apartment just to monitor activities, just to make sure that they're not breaking it, which is super invasive. And I know it's played for comedic effect, but a lot of critics find that very cringe, because no person would go that far, to make sure that it doesn't happen. A reverend could suggest that, a marriage counselor could suggest that, but neither one will be naive enough to assume that these two would probably stick to it. Cross your fingers that they listen to what you got to say and do like a honor code kind of situation. Especially when you're dealing with like a minister or a priest or a pastor or whatever like that, you'll probably be more inclined to adhere to that, because it's some like level of like a higher power if you believe in like whatever religion you believe in. So you'd be more inclined to not break it, but at the same time, you wouldn't think they'd be too naive to not assume that they're probably going to at least break it once. I'm not going to hold it against them, kind of thing, because they're other grown adults. I trust their judgment. But the fact that you bug out house to make sure they actually don't do it is crazy. But one of the classes, which is in like a bar, it's like a bar. I was about to say sports bar or something like that, but it's the same thing. And of course, you got one of the office dudes who's like the heavy set guy. I'm pretty sure is that dude with a crazy long name. The Brian guy. And of course, like, oh, he's fat, so we got to do the fat jokes. He's just like nothing but fat jokes with this guy. So he's only there for the potato skins kind of thing. It was so freaking funny though. So one of the lessons that Frank had to teach Sadie and Ben, that the other couples who's a lot older than them, not like elderly, but definitely been in the game for at least 5 to definitely most of them probably be a good 10 years in maybe, who was a little bit more seasoned in terms of experience in marriage, because Reverend Frank has expressed that, you know, there will be coming a time, which I even mentioned this in one of my ex-girlfriend, the first one, like a long time ago, about like, I don't know what was the context of the situation, but you didn't think it was like a good idea that couples should not be able to like argue so much and whatever like that. Well, wasn't arguing like constantly, but it's like, I was like, girl, you don't think like nobody's gonna argue at some point? We're not gonna have a disagreement. They'll be foolhardy about that. There's gonna be arguments, and long you with somebody, there's gonna be still, you know, arguments from time to time. Not that it's gonna be like if it's every day, then yes, there's a problem. But Reverend Frank points out, like, you know, like a scenario: you're on the road, it's pouring rain, the tire blew out, now you gotta fix the tire, there's no AAA, you gotta do it yourself. So that is like a recipe for a possible argument, and you have a couple of people to demonstrate what that will look like, because they're a newly coupled. It's all doughy-eyed, you know, optimistic kind of thing, which you'll think like, yo, you know, mid to late 20 somethings, y'all shouldn't be that naive. I'm pretty sure y'all had boyfriends and girlfriends prior to meeting each other, so y'all should be fully aware that you're gonna have arguments. That is kind of like a weird thing. I was like, why are you playing them like super naive, like they wouldn't expect to get an argument? You two didn't probably have any arguments yet, which I find that kind of, you know, I call cap on that, because even 6 months, let's say it was just 6 months since meeting each other, even within 6 months, you will argue about something. Might not be a big blow up, but it's just like, y'all like, oh, we never been in an argument. It's like, God, y'all are so stupid. That's so like a stupid line to say. But oh, and speaking of stupid lines, this is like a crazy, I don't know what's up with the writers. It was like a crazy thing they had written for the Sadie character during the 30-year anniversary party, where, you know, she said to Ben, I will marry you in a trash bag, something or other. It was like a long diatribe, and it's like no real person would say something like that. At the very least, simplify that to make it like, you know, to get your point across. It wasn't charming, let alone funny. So they do the Sadie and Ben do the simulation, but they actually have to do it as representing each other. So Sadie pretends to be Ben, and Ben pretends to be Sadie, and of course, hijinks ensues, and it causes, you know, Ben to get knocked back into the table while trying to pretend to reach for like the forgot what the name of the tool that helped loosen the bolts off of the tires to change the tire. He slipped, knocks into like the table with all the food, and of course Brian going like, no, the potato skins, and he eats it off the floor. Like, okay, there's making fat jokes, and then there's like, okay, that's unrealistic for any human being to, like, despite 5-second rule, to, you know, grab food off the ground to eat it before it goes like really bad. I was like, come on. I mean, maybe it was funny at the time, but probably for on that one level, maybe you just have to be a fan of The Office or something like that to really get a real kicker out of it. But I just thought, like, God. Anyway, then you get other stuff like, you know, the whole awkwardness with the in-laws and everything like that. And Sadie has this like childhood best friend who as little kids they took baths together and stuff like that. This is all kinds of effing weird. And it's like, why is it you still have like a childhood male best friend, which you know, you hope that these two didn't ultimately hook up at some point down the line, but let's say they didn't. But why would you still have this dude around so close to the family like that? Like, he doesn't have his own freaking family to go to. They act like he's like the, because at first, because I haven't seen this in years, at first I was like, oh, it must be the brother. But no, it's like a childhood best friend of Sadie. It's so weird. And you pay attention to how Sadie interacts with Charles Lee. I don't even know how to pronounce his name because it's seated very well, but I'll get to that at the end of the film. So they go to this like wine and cheese tasting for the reception. Reverend Frank shows up, and it's Sadie's family and Ben. And Frank, given his eccentric nature, tries to break the tension between, or at least the awkwardness between, Ben and his future new in-laws, just to get comfortable with each other. So do like word association. You look at one person and you say what word describes them that first comes to mind, and then it gets into like kind of like a roast with Ben roasting people, which causes like kind of like real awkwardness now. So to make him kind of look like a idiot, which I don't know why that was serve any particular purpose, but like I said, I'll get to that part later on in the film. So little by little, Reverend Frank gets more and more on Ben's nerves until at one point when he overhears these two about to get it on, he rushes to their apartment. Don't even know how he gets inside because you gotta get buzzed in downstairs, but he somehow slips through, knocks on their door, and it's like, oh, I was just in the neighborhood kind of thing, which I don't know why Sadie will buy that crap, but whatever. So yeah, sit down and pretty much explains about the temptations of the flesh between couples, because when things get kind of heated or tensions rises, people like to use sex as like a band-aid. But do you really know like the things that each other like sexually, blah blah blah, trying to open them up to each other, which is like highly inappropriate, A, and B, why would these two never had that kind of discussion? I'm pretty sure the longer they've been together, they would have had sex. One of it has been represented in the montage during the whole dating courtship phase, that they clearly had sex. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they had sex quite a lot of times leading up to this point. So you should know what each other like sexually. So it's kind of odd to have this kind of discussion and make it super awkward and cause like some weird argument where Sadie admits that she likes pretty much like public, not like public sex, but it's like the like a rush for sex, like it's playful laughs, but it's like, oh, like there's like a family party, you sneak to a bathroom adjacent of the house to have a quickie and things like that. She really into that kind of thing, and Ben is getting super like uncomfortable, like, whoa, why are you talking like that with the Reverend? And it's like why do you never ask me what kind of things I like? It shouldn't take my minister to bring it up. But it's like bitch, are you clueless? Like, are you clueless of how inappropriate are you talking now, especially in front of your man? It's kind of weird. But then after Ben talks with his friend. Oh no, there's another situation. They actually get these. Reverend Frank actually provides Sadie and uh uh Ben these robot babies to get them prepared for like parenthood, because they even had like a disagreement on how many kids that they want. She wants 4, he wants just 2. So they also need to prepare on the real life scenario of marriage, which will eventually include kids. And these robots simulate waking up 3 o'clock in the morning. They have to be kind of like, nursed to sleep and everything like that for at least a couple of days. So, while Ben's friend leaves their, his kids with them, while him and his wife, he go visit her father, who has some kind of like accident off a ladder, and he had to rush check up on him. So for a few hours, they have to deal with the fake babies along with the 2 toddlers that they have to wrangle together, while going to the store to do like the price check of stuff that for wedding gifts and things like that. So which leads to one of the funniest moments that I have for John Krasinski, where he just like one of the babies is starting a short circuit, and he's literally like just banging the freaking doll on the table, shocking everybody, thinking he's actually abusing like a baby. And it's like, don't worry, it's fake. And just to get the shot, because it's like everything's going crazy, which is a real life kind of scenario for people who have not just 1 but 2 kids, especially 4. That really kind of heightens everything else, which the choir boy is secretly following them. It's like, where is your parents? Why are you not with your parents, kid? Well, he's secretly following them, and use this like machine to like dial up the intensity or switch to a particular mood for the baby, just to catch them by surprise, because you never know how babies react. They could be probably fine, and then they can be crying their head off for no apparent reason in an inopportune time. But you think like they'll tone it down, given the fact that you see them already wrangling 2 real life kids, and it's like it's a lot. But I guess it works out in their favor, because like, yeah, if you have 4 kids, this is like probably gonna be even worse. At some point, Ben finds the bug in underneath the lamp in their apartment. He goes to his friend, and it's like, dude, this guy's crazy. He's bugging our house. Lord knows what he might have heard. And of course, I was going D. Ray Davis. D. Ray Davis explains to Ben, like, you can't go to your girl about this, because she probably not going to believe you, because she looks at the Reverend like he walks on water kind of situation. You need to find concrete proof. So Ben sneaks into the Reverend's apartment, finds this file about this woman named Maria Gonzalez, that she used to be married to Reverend Frank, but they divorced. So he's like, oh, I got you now, because you're a complete hypocrite, because you preaching all about like all this stuff with prenuptial premarital sex, and doing this whole course thing, and it's all a big cap. So, and all the while this is going on, Sadie's getting frustrated because she notices that Ben hasn't written his vows yet, while she's been finished with hers. And she sneaks and looks in his book, trying to look through it, and all she sees is like on the edges of the pages, he drew like a comic book strip of a truck going through a hoop of fire and crashing, which is frustrating her, because like during this whole time you just not been really putting the work in. So eventually, when Ben's parents show up and they go to one of the practice things in the church for the wedding reception, or at least the wedding ceremony. I'm sorry. Ben and Sadie have like this bickering moment right there in front of everybody, and Ben decides to try to out Reverend Frank, but Frank explains that Maria, a long time ago was an illegal immigrant. He chose to marry her so she can be legal eventually, because she had like she was pregnant at the time or something like that. But then she moved to Mexico, had a baby. It was a boy. He grew up, moved to the States to go. He got accepted to like Harvard or Yale or something like that. And there's something to help her out of a dire situation. And so Sadie is frustrated with Ben. Her and her family leave. He punches out Reverend Frank, and then he leaves. So the whole thing has been called off. Reverend Frank, coaxed Sadie to use the tickets they was going to use to go to Jamaica for a honeymoon, to go take her and her family out there to just have like a surprise vacation trip. After talking with his friend at the bar, he come to realize that there's no other woman I want but Sadie. Reverend Frank overhears this, so Ben runs and takes like a flight to Jamaica, tries to get in contact with Sadie. She ain't trying to hear him. This is when Sadie has a talk with her family. Her parents explains to her, which I don't know why they didn't. Maybe it's because it wasn't the right time. They want to bring, because I was about to say, why didn't they bring it up right then and there when things are blowing up in front of their face? But I guess it wasn't an appropriate time. She was in her feelings, and gotta let things cool off, so she could probably listen to reason. So she just be supportive. But the parents bring up like, year 15, 16, there's been like a incredibly rocky situation between the two of them, but they pushed through it just to make it through the 30-year anniversary, because marriage is tough. It's not going to be an easygoing thing. I don't know why she assumed that it was going to be. Like, you spend most of your life under the roof of your parents who've been married a long time. You haven't heard arguments between these two, blow-ups, whatever. That is weird. Why wouldn't you not? But she thinks like this is a picturesque relationship her parents have, but you never once heard them argue. That is weird. Not realistic. But then, harking back to what I said about the best friend earlier, when earlier in the video, he, Charles Lee explains to Sadie, it's like, look, I'll back you whatever you want, wherever you want to do, because I'm your friend. But you gotta see things through Ben's point of view, because Ben pointed out, it's like, in that blow up in the church, it's like I'm sorry, not your best friend Charles Lee, and like, how's this cheese taste, and woo woo. And Charles Lee points out, like, look at through Ben's point of view. It's like, every time you have a problem, who do you run to? You run to me. How do you think that makes Ben feel? Like, he wants to be the one that you want to. He wants to be the one that you rely on, and not somebody else. And I like that discussion, because every guy likes to be like, feel like a man, but it's like there's a sense of purpose knowing that your girl knows that you got it and she can come to you, and that makes you feel good as a man. It's like, yeah, like, you you know you can fix things, or at least try to fix things, or figure out a way to make things better for her if she comes to you with a problem. And if you end up going to somebody else that doesn't feel good for the guy in the relationship, that means like, oh, she doesn't trust you with an issue, that that she goes to somebody else but you. You should be the first one on the list before anybody else. So glad they point that out, because that is a very crucial thing in terms of like a serious relationship, especially a marriage. Next day, Ben shows up outside her window, written his vows on the sandy beach, which is very impractical, but the gesture is there. She and him reconcile, and it's all part of, Reverend Frank's plan. He passes them, he weds them there in Jamaica, and the movie ends. Now, in terms of the movie aspect, it's Robin Williams is funny at times, but it seems, according to the critics at the time, it seems like not Robin Williams' best in terms of comedy. It's decent. You enjoy, Robin Williams of it all in general, but it's not like something like Mrs. Doubtfire or The Genie or Patch Adams, is where it serves the whole entire narrative, and the writing follows Robin Williams, well, instead of Robin Williams trying to follow whatever comedy they're trying to write for the movie. It in a lot of aspects it doesn't work well. They have to do it that way, or at least if Robin Williams doing something, they have like a particular thing, like Aladdin. At first they had like a particular thing, but once they see Robin Williams doing his own little shtick, they have to, okay, let's rework some things so we can track all his mannerisms and jokes and impressions, and try to match him rather than him trying to match us. And that's what this director should have done, because Robin Williams may work the best as he can, but it's not one of his best materials. The characters are fine. They're not nothing egregious, but it's kind of written kind of naive, or at least in Katie's point, kind of an idiot. And there's the sister that doesn't really offer much to the entire narrative. You would think there's a moment where, Sadie offering, wants her console on something, but she's dealing with her own little crisis that, that never even was resolved. You'll think like, oh, her and the best friend would end up together, but they didn't really, at best, they might have hinted at that to tail end, but you don't care. And she doesn't even offer any type of words of wisdom. She even said basically like I'm going through some other stuff. I have no kind of wisdom to offer you right now. Sorry. I was like, you're useless. It's like, this is a perfect opportunity for some agency for the sister, but she is completely pointless. And you could have just made like the best friend the brother, but I guess it works, for what it gave us at the end. But in terms of like how the relationship work, because it's February is the romantic month for like Valentine's Day and all the other schlocky stuff. In terms of all that aspect, I think I can see where they're coming from. The execution is kind of poor, and they kind of over exaggerate for comedic effect. But the whole concept of like some kind of marriage classes, I think that is kind of like a genius move, where so many couples, and I imagine, focus on the whole wedding part, but doesn't understand there's a whole big chapter after that it's going to take up the entirely ideally the rest of your life until one or both of you drop dead. And things like children, you gotta be prepared for something like that. It's not gonna be all like easy, and they treat it like it's gonna be easy, which is kind of idiotic. Even as a kid, I thought like, dude, that's not gonna be easy. But like, babies cry, they wake you up 3 o'clock in the morning for crap, and you gotta feed them. Because I had a little brother when he was like a baby. Like, I had to prepare a bottle and change him, and if because my father usually had to work at night, and my stepmom was dead asleep, so me and my other brother would be up preparing bottles and getting ready in case they need to be filled up right on the spot, so that way we can quickly feed the youngest brother and rock him to sleep and everything like that. Crack at like 3 o'clock in the morning, despite the fact that we're gonna have to get up for school in 5 hours later, or 4 or 5 hours later. So it's like it's a pain in the butt. And also arguments, you're gonna have to get in arguments, and it's like they got to you got to be prepared for that kind of stuff. Sure, it's all sunshine and rainbows right now because you're in that swooning phase, but that will dissipate. There's like a chemical in a lot of people's brain, especially the females, where it's like, oh my god, he's the love of my life, and he makes me feel all these feelings, and he's like nothing, he does nothing wrong, woo woo, and everything he does is cute and funny, blah blah blah. But it's like that goes away. Things that you might like about him might irritate you at some point down the line for at least like a day or two, whatever. He will do something that might appear stupid to you, or like, why did you do that? And I was like, how many times I tell you not to leave the seat up and blah blah blah. And he might get irritated with you for doing whatever dumb thing you might come up with on a random day. You don't know. Things will get heated, but the point of the exercise, I imagine, is the fact that despite all that, you will power through it. You don't let that erode the relationship altogether over this minute thing, because in the grand scheme of things, they all are minute, aside from like I said, like you're going through maybe like a substance abuse or assault or something like that. But aside from those two major factors, because those are major factors that I would agree might be grounds for divorce, but everything else, in my opinion, you can power the freak through, or at least go to some kind of marriage counselor to work on that kind of stuff. And in most cases, I've heard that it's ideal that you go to marriage counselors not when things are going wrong. You go when everything is fine, so that way you have the proper tools, so when things go down, you can properly navigate that, so it won't be like a big deal when it inevitably pops up. In the whole concept of the exercise course seems like an ideal thing. I can see the concept of the premise. I don't think it was executed very well. It's not one Robin Williams' best, but I can see like why John Krasinski is beloved by many people. He's currently a director now, which is like crazy how things like things happen over time. I'm surprised Mandy Moore. Yeah, I'm surprised Mandy Moore ain't done more stuff. I'm pretty sure she's what was she like the voice for Once Upon a Studio as one that short films for Disney Plus for in 2023 as Rapunzel. Prior to that, she was in a movie like Midway. So yeah, she's still been acting. I just haven't been following along like that. Oh, she was the voice of Rapunzel in Tangled. It was like, oh wow, didn't even know that. Crazy. So yeah, she's been, you know, still acting. I'm glad she, you know, she's still been working, because, you know, certain people like in the early 2000s, you tend to forget, like well, you wonder like whatever happened to them. Oh, you know, you look it up, you might be surprised they still working. You've probably been in stuff that you've seen that you just didn't peep right off the bat, because they're not like something like Ryan Gosling or something like that, where it's like always in your face. Which it's kind of like, as an actor, I want to be like that with Mandy Moore or even John Krasinski, where it's like, you know, I don't need to be front and center. I just like to be in stuff. Like a good character actor, that is more than enough for me personally. That way you won't be trapped in the whole Hollywood kind of machine, which is, they have their fair share of problems. Let's put it that way. Anyway, that was License to Wed. My thoughts on that. You know, it's a fine film. It's just, you know, it's a harmless, fine film. But then again, at the time it came in number 4 at the box office. Of course, it got beat up by Live Free or Die Hard. I think, you know, that was a solid Die Hard film and probably should have ended there, because after that it got crap. Ratatouille, and what was the third thing? The first Transformers film. So yeah, especially Ratatouille, you know, that's just like, yeah, you're that still to this day is one of a lot of people's favorite Disney films. But yeah, but I'm surprised. I'm glad it at least got number 4 in the slot, so it still made its money back, so it did fairly well. So anyway, I will see you guys in a few minutes to do my review of the speaking of Disney, my review of The Princess and the Frog. Look forward to that, and follow me in links in the description below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.